Welcome to the London Fortean Society people at Conway Hall. Hello. And those of you watching online. So we're trying both for a whole new future where we can exist both physically and online. Welcome. Hope you're all well. And hope you've been keeping well in this increasingly bad time. Welcome. So it's going to be kind of, for those of you who are here, it's going to be like how it used to be, but less people, and it might be harder to get a beer afterwards. I don't know. And for those who are online, it's going to be like being when I was in my shed, and hopefully only a little bit different to that. But let's find out. We're all going to find out together. We're on a brilliant adventure, all of us. First topic for this brave new world. Twins are very much a thing in folklore around Forteana, from psychic research to the idea of, do co-joined twins have one soul or two souls, or what? Who could possibly answer that question is Will Viney, researcher at Goldsmiths University, one half of a twinlet himself. So please welcome in the room with actual applause, if you don't mind. I'm a bit rusty at this. Will Viney, and you're at home, bang your baked bean tins and stuff. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Scott, very much for that introduction. It's going to just take me a little time to set this up, because here we are in person and things aren't magic anymore. So let me do that. We've talked about Brave New World, and of course Aldous Huxley's Brave New World is entirely populated by twins, much to the horror of our hero protagonist. So I don't know where that's getting me, other than to thank Scott very much, and everybody here for coming, and particularly to the technical team. As you can see, have worked really hard to put this together. Thank you to the Conway Hall for hosting all this. It's a very special, I guess it's a very special time for me. Like, I have worked on this book for quite a long time. It's a real kind of rare opportunity to talk to people about it, you know. Anyway, we could go further with that, and I won't. Twins is now out in bookshops, and you can buy Twins from reputable and disreputable booksellers. So please do that if you feel the urge. I cannot begin to speak about this book without feeling compelled to have the feeling or the need to give an account of myself. And certainly when I was writing the book, people I met weren't really interested in what I was saying. I mean, I think they kind of were curious a little bit, but really what they wanted to know about was me. They wanted to know not what quite, you know, what the structure and the content, the arguments, what made it different to other books, the things that perhaps were kind of concerning to me when I was writing it, but they wanted to know my story. Do you have a twin? Do you have twins? It's the sort of thing people ask me. And I find myself, you know, before long, I'm talking about him and about me and about us and about when we were small, particularly when we were small. People want to talk about me when I was a child. And I guess there's no escaping the fact that this is a book that will always maybe get me to a point where I'm kind of explaining who I am, or who I think I might be. And I guess I'm doing that now, right? I guess I'm doing that before the questions come. I'm kind of like seeing that one off at the pass. Excuse me. No. Okay. And if you're thinking, well, that's just because this guy's, you know, a wild narcissist and he can't help but, you know, talk about himself, then yes. But I have to add that in addition to that, it has been really nice to talk about this book with people, because all of a sudden they want to tell me all about what interests them about twins. suddenly I'm being told about mothers and fathers and cousins and aunties, about their joys and their losses, about the twins that they know in the end, or even the twin they think that I might be. And I'm slightly shocked at this. I'm slightly shocked at how people's line of questioning delves into this level of disclosure. They seem to adjust the moment that twins come into the frame. People are rarely afraid to ask, so are you close? Are you alike? Is he an academic too? Do you look alike? Can I see a picture? Now, as little boys, we grew kind of slowly, I guess, aware that not everyone had a twin, and encountered these kind of quite simple problems of recognition. We learned that eventually a kind of invisible hand could come and separate us from our companions, and how this happened and when and in what circumstances, it could take us by surprise. We were simply different for being two, different for looking alike. And this could be kind of quite hard work in the part of rural England where we grew up, where anonymity was actually quite rare. And everyone was already, in a way, kind of alike. I mean, you're already somebody's son. You're recognized as someone's brother. You're a kind of type. You're a farmer, you're a townie, you're a surfer, a goth. A type, then, among quite a limited number of types, also typical of England then at the end of the 20th century. And I guess necessity and convenience could, coincide sometimes, and it would just be easier to answer to one another's names. Just an easier way of dealing with some of the confusion. I didn't want to fool anyone. It wasn't because it was kind of fun for us. It was simply easier than correcting everyone who mixes up. And this still happens, actually, when I go back to rural Dorset. I meet an old classmate from 20 years ago, and I can still see this uncertainty come into their eyes. So which one are you? And I've met twins who have impersonated each other over several months, travelled on one another's passports, attended each other's classes at school and at university. But I am at a loss to know what to say when people ask us what kind of tricks we played on people, when our social world seemed entirely fooled of its own accord. Of course, not all twins create confusion in equal measure, and many twins, including the twins I've interviewed as part of my research, view themselves as entirely mundane and quite kind of run-of-the-mill and not at all magical. I wonder sometimes whether this is an aspect of twins and twinning that we want to acknowledge. Anyway. And so twins, and including this book now, it still gives me a dose of doubt. I mean, I'm not settled on this. I really don't think that my experience of being a twin is straightforward, and I'm pretty sure that I've lived a certain kind of twin life, one that's relatively privileged according to my class or my race, my national status, my creed, and so on. I want to stress then that what I have experienced does not give me any natural permission to speak for others, and there are good reasons to think that my experience as a twin is not in the least bit typical. And when I started the work, I guess I was quite skeptical about general claims made surrounding what makes twins twin, like a community of people that share kind of common experiences or qualities or natural or supernatural talents or capacities that often then are used to define twins as individuals or pairs or a group. One reason for my enduring skepticism, I call it, is not because my research has revealed some sort of magic skeleton key of truth where I now know all things about twins, some kind of master theory that explains them to everybody else, but because actually the cultural and kind of historical work that I've done has shown me that how numerous and fragile those theories can be. What I want to do then tonight is to highlight some of these theories in the hope that they might interest you and provoke you and maybe provoke a good conversation about how we value twin people and how they might in turn value themselves. I think we rarely give much time to consider twins as a kind of category, a category of being, a category of living, a category of history that has changed over time and continues to change with time. So what's going to happen next is a really highly selective tour of twins that have inspired superstitions and marvels and fantasies and experiments. And then at the end of the talk, I want to show you a short film that I made in the course of the work that I've been doing. And that's not really a conclusion. I guess it's a way of starting a conversation about twins and to hear more about what interests you. So let's start in the past, but really in the future as well. Let's start with myth. Twins have been imagined in myths, and myths are used as ways of imagining both the fundamentals that constitute the present and also the hopes that we put in the future. So here are Greek gods, Castor and Pollux. They're interesting to me, not because they're like the first myths about twins, but they are very similar actually to other twin gods found in other ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian, Indo-Aryan, Teutonic and Celtic twin myths and cults who existed and did exist separate to Greek and Roman twin heroes, but suggest kind of common patterns between them, maybe even long forgotten chains of narrative repetition and influence and adaptation. In all these traditions, the twins are male or predominantly male. They're warriors. They're horsemen, and they're kind of celestial. So they're like stars, they're moons, they're suns, that sort of thing. Castor and Pollux are mentioned in Homer in the late 8th or early 7th century BC as two sons or intrepid twins. But they're not yet the gods that we know from, say, the Theban poet Pindar much later in the 5th century BC, who calls them gods. And they're not just ordinary gods, they are kind of demigods, and they're weird kinds of twins. I mean, they're demigods in the sense that they're not entirely human or divine, and they're not entirely twins for the reasons I'm going to tell you. But they became really popular. Their myth, Pindar's version, became really popular in the medieval and Renaissance period, and therefore got set in stone, put down in wood, paint, bronze, immortalized in all kinds of legends and images as the twins Gemini, the heavenly twins. So according to one telling, the twins are born to their mother Leda, but the twins have different fathers. So Pollux is the immortal son of the god Zeus, and Castor, the mortal son of a Spartan king called Tyndareus. So the god Pollux is conceived when Zeus takes the form of a swan and has sex with Leda or rapes Leda. And there are significant differences in account of this story, and I can't go into those differences now, but I just want to make you aware of them, because later pagan and then Catholic descriptions of this story took a lot of interest in what Leda was doing, having sex with a swan, and artists working in huge range of different media were often curious to know whose godly or mortal lusts they were displaying. Anyway, very shortly after this union, Leda has sex with her husband Tyndareus, and they conceive Castor. So the twins are formed in that way. So they're called the heavenly twins, as and modern biologists might say that they're a kind of form of super fecundated twins. They are born because two or more ova are fertilized by sperm from separate separate sexual intercourse. something that farmers and other animal breeders will tell you happens quite frequently among animals, but is actually less common among humans. So, over the centuries, this erotically bombastic story has been seen as joyful and violent and transgressive, and as a sort of fantasy jumble of otherwise separate worlds of gods and humans and animals all mixed together. And it seems important to me, at least, that it's twins that rise out of this jumble. It's twins, not single-born people, that are the emblems of a new settlement between the heavens and the earth. So I want to tell you that some of this, of course, is like ancient history, but some of it isn't really ancient histories. It's still an understanding or vision of twins that has some currency. In a way, I'm making it still a present kind of form of currency by telling you about it today, albeit, I think, steered by somewhat different biological, religious, and social and other storytelling practices than the more ancient forms I've just described. So Greek and Roman mythology and their ancient celebrants were partly supported by natural philosophers and medics like Aristotle, Hippocrates, and Galen, whose writings also made twins extraordinary. So for Aristotle, twins are what he called monstrosities, because they do not follow matter or form. Instead, among these ancient Greek thinkers, twins are materially malformed or deformed or disabled. They arise out of matter that is abnormal and atypical. So if, for Aristotle, biology is guided by rules of formal and material necessity, then twins are humankind's made by physical excess. So twinning makes biological rules and customs then kind of explicit, and Aristotle therefore asserted the basis of how we should judge human reproduction is on the basis of that we should normally be born as one. If twins are kind of monsters for Aristotle, then it's not because they are horrifying or awful, so not kind of monstrous in the scary sense, I don't think, but more or closer to the Greek sense of the word, meaning that they are signs or wonders and marvels or portents of a natural and therefore kind of magical world that may otherwise be hidden. I want to take this combined story of myths and gods and sex and monsters into medieval Europe, where folklore and fairy tale made twins signs of intrigue and adultery and poor health. So the image here is of a 12th century image called a figura infirmitatem. It really is a kind of map of disease placed upon a woman's body. She's more or less got everything you don't want, including twins. So you can't quite make them out, but they are kind of poking their little faces around the corner there, either side of our abdomen. Just as Lada's twins were the outcome of rape, bestiality, and infidelity, forming a constellation we still call Gemini, so medieval stories about twins almost always tie them to the idea that someone, usually a woman, was having too much sex with too many people. In a striking number of court poems and popular ballads, women are accused of having sex with more than one person when they fall pregnant and have twins. And one really popular plot device was for a pregnant woman to be accused of having a pregnant woman with twins being accused of adultery, and then the woman that accused her then also falling pregnant with twins. And then she's like, oh my, no, I'm incriminated by my own scandal. And then what often happens is that the twins, either both of them or one of them is abandoned. And it's like the sense that the sanction and stigma of adultery is so strong, is so much greater than the idea of discarding your newborn children. in one popular 12th century court poem by Marie de France, the mothers of twins accuse each other in that way of adultery. And then one twin, our heroine, is abandoned in an ash tree in the grounds of a local abbey and is brought up by an abbess. And she grows up and she's very beautiful, and a passing knight comes by and notices her, and they fall in love. But unfortunately, she's a mere foundling. She has no wealth. He's like, I'm a knight. I need a wealthy woman. And there's somebody at court that looks just like you. And so they decide that they're going to get married. And then right on the wedding night, everyone realizes who everyone is. He's actually got tangled up with two twins, and the formerly poor but now rich abandoned twin is brought back to court, and they get married, and everyone lives happily ever after. And it's quite difficult after all that to remember that the beginning of this romance started with the accusation of adultery merely at the event of a twin pregnancy. And I started to think, like, why should that be the case? And part of it, I think, part of the explanation comes back to some of the ancient texts and writings that we talked about earlier, and also their combination with various sort of religious practices and theological ideas. So concerns about the medical dangers of multiple births can be found in those ancient medical texts, and they detail some of the problems associated with multiple pregnancies. But as some medieval interpretations of Aristotle and so on illustrated these tracts with these extraordinary sorts of images, which give a kind of visual clue as well as a sort of a visual record of how twinning was being explained and imagined in utero through these gynecological tracts that use these kind of exposed female uterus, sort of like light bulbs, kind of cross-section, kind of imagined uterus as a vessel, disembodied from its surrounding organism. Now, the image to the left recalls the Bible's most influential pair of twins, Jacob and Esau, who are said to have struggled together in Rebekah's womb. With, if you see on the right side there, one twin clasping the other's ankle, similar to how Jacob is said to have taken hold on Esau's heel. In medical texts like these, we see the kind of dramatic and foreboding sense that physical conflict in the womb is what causes postnatal conflict or struggle in infant and adult life, especially in monotheistic cultures, patriarchal systems of primogeniture. The arrival of twins could be met with a medically and therefore kind of like a moral sense of foreboding, where the birth of twins could bring a sense of imminent danger as well as lifelong discord. So the author of the text on the other side here, Albert the Great, gave women almost exclusive responsibility for the generation and birth of twins, and he explicitly made twin babies a sign of a sort of kind of fallen animality, a kind of imperfection and sinfulness. Twins signal a woman's almost boundless reproductive capacity and sexual desire, which Albert claimed was only equal to horses. And so what you're seeing here is a woman who's pregnant with a singleton and then with twins. And then this poor lady is pregnant with 28 fetuses, and she's got 5. But there's a sense that there was no real limit to kind of human potential. It's a kind of quite dark Catholic worldview. So, this was a way of binding together how pain and physical abnormalities, of physical Monstrosity could link with ethical behavior and religious custom, also called moral monstrosity. And twins, therefore, are like kind of recruited into these scholarly debates as evidence, as a kind of omen, as proof of parental and moral error and the sinfulness of mankind. So then, I mean, if much of this feels rather remote to you and somewhat removed from present-day experiences of twins, then I partly agree with you. Modern medicine, for those who can access it, means that the arrival of twins is not nearly as dangerous as it once was. But I want to highlight how the combination of medical and moral danger associated with twins is not altogether disappeared, and although twin anxieties may have changed, they've changed shape. They're driven by different concerns, and I want to highlight some of those, which are firstly assisted reproductive technologies. This is Louise Brown, the first baby born through IVF, and she's I think it's her 20th birthday. She's holding IVF twins alongside IVF and other technologies. I want to just discuss briefly mass and other newer forms of social media that involve twins and make twins and form new opportunities for particular kinds of twins to circulate as kin, as brothers and sisters, as entertainers, and as performers. So you might be aware that twin birth rates in the UK and US have grown significantly in recent years. So they've almost doubled in the last decade. So they're back in 1980, twin births accounted to sort of 18 births in every 1,000. And now it's more like 33 twin births every 1,000 births. So that's the last year or so, that number. Much of that is due to new reproductive technologies and the accompanying legal frameworks and societal changes that have come with or alongside IVF. It's not just the numbers of twins, but when people conceive twins, how they conceive them, who conceives them. All of this has been affected by the availability of modern drugs, therapies, techniques, and social processes. So I want you to consider briefly Barry and Tony Truett Barlow, who more than 20 years ago became pioneer activist consumers. They were the first gay couple to have a child through IVF surrogacy, and thanks to multi-embryo transfer, they were the first gay couple to have the second IVF baby born by surrogacy. Aspen and Saffron Truett Barlow were born in December 1999. Barry and Tony chose to have twins. And in fact, from a report I read recently, about 80% of same-sex couples who become parents of twins do so through accessing reproductive services. And Barry and Tony, though, also chose to adapt the genetic parentage of their twins. So Aspen is the biological son of Tony, and Saffron is the biological daughter of Barry. They were born to the same gestational surrogate and to different biological fathers. So both were conceived using the same donor eggs of a married Californian woman, Tracy McCune. But the twins are genetic half-siblings born in a single gestation to different biological fathers. So they have a biological mother and a gestational mother. So politically, as well as biologically, their relationship to their parents and to one another has been uniquely queered. Aspen is, though, also he's an IVF twin twice. He is a gestational IVF twin to his sister Saffron, and a monozygotic, non-gestational IVF twin to his brother Orlando, who was born 4 years later. At least one embryo had split from Aspen's embryo and was cryogenically frozen back in 98. I'm unclear on the dates, but more or less around that time. And from one of these cryogenically frozen embryos using just another gestational surrogate, a third baby was born, Orlando, who's seen here, sat in Aspen's lap. In a sense, Orlando is a monozygotic or identical twin, what we call identical twin, but he is 4 years younger than his brother Aspen. The situation, I think, partly reveals how twin relationships are grounded in common sense and also ideas of common events. So, at the very basic, conception, gestation, and birth. And then in kind of second to that, the idea that they have a similar exposure to diets, to education, to cultural phenomena, that they may form common memories. Not only can some kinds of IVF twinning challenge conservative traditional conceptions of family and kinship, they can also transform standards of twins and twinning. And I think some of our more secure ideas about what makes a twin, in this case, can become kind of untwinned. While all this was going on, and a little bit before as well, I really liked the late 70s, 80s, and 90s. During the rapid development of IVF technologies, Hollywood was having a field day entertaining the masses with twin films, often staging unlikely pairs of twins that were magically or maniacally or accidentally born, pathologically close, spiritually and physically interconnected. Twins, I think this is a kind of twin age, in a kind of a spectacular age where twins were made a kind of spectacle. They were hugely entertaining. And as a child of the 80s and 90s, you might remember these things differently, but I don't think I paid any attention to them whatsoever. In terms of being like media products that were capitalizing on an idea of twins and twinning. But actually now I think about it, in retrospect, I think it's perfectly reasonable to think of these often funny, frequently weird representations of twins as adding to a kind of chorus, a kind of longer history of myth-making and thinking with twins that has made them really exciting spectacles and powerful vehicles for our social practices and structures of belief. These days, we have twinfluencers, twin couples who monetize their relationships on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and Silicon Valley platforms of all kinds. And these pairs have huge audiences. So Ethan and Grayson Dolan, the Dolan twins, they have 10.5 million subscribers on their YouTube channel. And the Rybka twins from Australia, they have 7.5 million followers on their YouTube. And that's just on YouTube. So they've got Instagram accounts and TikTok accounts and others. So they reach millions through these kind of dance routines and hoaxes and interviews and skits and memes and stuff. So kind of like a vaudeville kind of twinship that is circulated on this media that is, of course, like really repetitive and easily shared and made by and made for often teens and people in their 20s, but it's exporting, I don't quite know what model of export, leave that one, but they're exporting the image of twins in ways that really perforate national and linguistic boundaries that once defined what sociologists and other social scientists would call a kind of milieu, a kind of environment. The often visually manicured blend of twinning, this sort of stunning embodied blend of computational power, because this is what it is, it's all done on algorithms, monetizes then an already well-established set of fantasies about having, about being, about wanting a twin sibling. And social media then meets some, I think, really, really old ideas about twins in society, and the society that twins, or it is imagined that twins can keep. So I'm almost finished. There's no easy or straightforward way of telling the story of twins, as you can tell. And it doesn't run right from the beginning to the end like some kind of Attenborough documentary, at least it doesn't for me. Now, there are numbers and statistics, and they will tell you and reveal to you where twins exist, but I don't think they can really do justice to the stories that get told about twins, the stories that can be both actually scientific, but also take flight into big realms or, fantastic realms of artistic and religious practice and philosophy and politics. And though twins now are often divided in a way that I alluded to earlier, according to molecular relationships, they're like separated into different populations and groups. There's nothing kind of inevitable or universal about that. I mean, those categories have actually only existed, many of them, for about 100 years. So if there is one thing I want to leave with you, is the idea that there will always remain like many counter histories of twin curiosity and bewilderment and secret and maybe not so secret histories of wonder that are reserved for twin people, and that cannot be easily answered by the powerful ideas that are currently supplied, I think, by biomedicine. This is a history that highlights how those biomedical ideas, my history, I suppose, is one that tries to highlight how those biomedical ideas are actually just latest in a long story of observing, examining, and making sense of the world with twin people. So I want to end by showing you a short film, which is a technical segue, which, as I hope you're now accustomed, could go many directions. And I just hope you can bear with me for a moment while I set that out. But it's, as I said before, it's really not a conclusion to this talk. It's actually kind of a nice way of starting a conversation, if we can do that, about twins. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you all. And I'll put this film on now. Thank you.
Sometimes you kind of like wish that maybe you weren't a twin sometimes, but then when you think about it, like, I can't be in this world by myself.
Yeah. Sometimes I look at other people like walking around, I'm just like, how do you be
How do you walk around just by yourself?
Well, when we were younger, when we were babies, we were actually separated at birth. So it's very unusual, obviously, for that to happen to twins. So, but we did see each other because Dinah was adopted within the family and I was fostered.
We're actually identical twin cousins, so work that one out.
It's quite intense having somebody your own age around the whole time.
To the point of claustrophobia.
Yeah, I wouldn't go...
With certainly, at certain points...
Older.
When we were getting older, then it became a real issue.
I think if people ask about being a twin, people very much focus on the relationship between the two people in that twin unit, but I think actually it shapes your individual relationships with my feeling is that it's with everybody.
Quite embarrassing, but I remember going shopping to the local shops and then seeing this big mirror, but I didn't realise it was a mirror, and I thought my lookalike play friend was running towards me, and then I just ended up headlong into the mirror, which was very upsetting and shattering at the time.
University was the first time we'd spent more than maybe a night or two apart from each other.
Yeah.
So that was a big step for
Rite
us.
of passage.
We shared a bedroom until I went away to university. So there was a kind of curious intimacy, but at the same time an absence. So although we were very close to each other physically, there was such a psychological distance between us. We rarely shared any kind of interests in common. Yeah.
One question that is really annoying is when we're asked, are you twins?
Yes.
The whole twin tuition. Can you think what she thinks? Do you know if she's feeling sad?
We came down, the guy looked up, and he literally had to like open the train door to tell us like, are you twins? I was like, yes, we are. Like, it was so annoying.
If I pinch this twin's gonna feel it right there. It's nothing like that.
Will it be there?
I do not. Don't do it with me. You cut me up.
He pinched my leg.
I pinched my leg.
Are you telepathic? To me is not a very interesting question. I wish I was. I sometimes lie about it to amuse myself. Have you ever slept with the same person? You know, yes, we did once. I mean, that is actually a sort of funny story, but, you know, so I don't really mind that one. I'm not fascinated by my own twinness, I guess.
Because there is an element that I know if she's feeling sad, when she's physically there and her mouth's curved upside down and she's got tears coming out of her eyes, in the same way that I could tell whether anyone else is feeling sad.
You can read each other's body language, obviously. You can't read each other's minds.
Yeah, I had a dream that Dinah was pregnant with her last baby, and she was.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hadn't spoken to you at that time.
A really vivid dream. I actually told my daughter. I said to my daughter, oh, you know, Auntie Dinah's pregnant. Oh, don't be silly, she wouldn't have another baby.
Yeah, I wonder if you knew before I did, actually.
We often are asked about our characters.
And I say I'm a lot like you.
I see. And I don't.
Well, no.
No. In my response to that question was, well, what's Will like?
He's a lot like me.
I don't tend to think of myself as being a lot like you, so I never say it to other people. No.
Should have asked us what our favourite food was. You would have seen our different response. Mine's pasta.
Mine's lasagna.
People think or presume, because you are a twin, that you think exactly alike, you like exactly the same things,
You've got
hobbies.
the same interests. Yeah.
Which can be very different.
And you can have separate friendship groups, you don't have to have the same gaggle of friends. And we are individuals in our own right.
We're individual people, we're just born the same time. We look exactly alike.
There's a minute
difference. Okay, there's a minute between us, but...
It's
but 3
still...
minutes is a big...
No, it's not.
It's
it's
so
not.
big.
It's
It
not.
is actually so big.
It's actually not.
Like 4 minutes. 6.
I had straight hair and I was straight Sam, and then my sister had curly hair and she was curly Cat, and that was kind of a natural thing, but we did kind of play on it as well, to sort of have our own identities.
He was the one who was beautiful and I was the one who was plain. I was clever and he was deemed to be stupid, which he wasn't. He was practical and I was cerebral. So it was like the qualities given out by a good and bad fairy at a christening. We were we were typecast and given our roles from very early on.
Yeah, but I think, if you're told you're like something, you're that sort of person at a young age, and maybe that's a function of being a twin, that people will analyse you with greater scrutiny. At least our parents perhaps did, because there was, there's always somebody to compare you to.
They always said some fairly extraordinary things about us. They used to say that you would grow up to become a policeman because you're so law-abiding, and I'd either be a millionaire or in prison. I mean...
But I noticed a change when Lou got into like a serious relationship, and then got moved in with John, and then he got married, and then I became a mum. I think that's changed things, and I get that. That's a transition, I think. But as a twin, you're used to doing things together, and at the same time, actually, you turn 18 together, you turn 21 together, you go through these life stages of going to university together, and that's something, although I'm part of it, I'm not on that same trajectory. And so I think that was difficult for me, although it's brilliant as well. Yeah.
That's one thing I have really scared of separating us.
Yeah.
I don't think that will ever happen, but mainly when it comes to friendships, my mum tells me, friends come and go. That's what she always tells us. And, we've had a few friendships where we've almost been separated. Thank God that didn't happen.
So he was 65 when he died, and his family didn't tell me. His family had, by that time, he and his family had cut complete all contact with my mother and with me. So I learned of it. And then my first thought was, oh gosh, we'll never be reconciled now. There's so many things that we'll never say. I don't know if somewhere I'd kept in my mind a hope that there might be some sort of explanation or some kind of, some sort of conciliatory opening before we died. But it didn't happen. I couldn't believe it. I can't believe it. I cannot believe all the time when we weren't speaking and we didn't know each other as later in adult life. I couldn't believe this is my life. This is what's happened. This was the result of everything that had happened. And it was like irretrievable.
The thing about Zand and his, the risk of something happening to him is that when he's not there, I feel to some extent like I'm only half there, that he better represents me than I do myself, or that together we completely represent ourselves. And so if something happened, eventually one of us will die first. That is an inevitability. And so there's maybe that. It's a thing, but I don't think about it very much until I'm forced to. It's sort of, well, how would I deal with that? I don't know.
It's probably people hear more about the positive experience of having a twin, I think. To talk about that, I think there might be a bit of a taboo to talk about if you were twins and it not be a very pleasant, nice thing.
And not get on.
Yeah.
People do expect it to be a special relationship.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we'd been raised together, we just would have had more twin moments, as we probably should have done. Yeah. And so we probably robbed a bit of our twinship, really.
Yeah.
Through circumstances, obviously through no fault of our own, but it's just made you feel a little bit of a loss there, what we should have had but didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand what being a twin is like, what the good things and the bad things are. And I'm not even sure that I understand those things until I sit down with you and start to really think deeply about the good things and the bad things. I do think for me, being a twin is very good, and I would be crippled without my twin brother. That Zand is in some way I allow him to be something that I cannot be, and vice versa.